Today I'm going to be showing you how to put together this wonderful little kit for a cylinder vacuum cleaner, and these were popular during the sort of 1930s to 1950s. I'm going to be using mine in my contemporary doll's house, and I'm going to have it sort of stowed away in the attic, so even if you haven't got a vintage style doll's house you could still incorporate this piece. Okay, let's get started. So this is how your little kit will arrive. Everything all in the one little bag. So there isn't actually a sort of written instruction leaflet with this kit, but you do get this exploded diagram, and it really is very simple to put together, so you don't need written instructions. And this diagram shows you all of the parts, so the first thing to do is just check against that you've got all of the bits that you need. So here we've got the cylinder vacuum cleaner body, and then you've got these two end pieces that are different, so as we're working our way through I'll show you which one goes at which end. You've then got a tiny little piece there which just goes in the end of this end piece here. You've then got the metal hose part with the handle on it. Got a little sort of grip handle at one end. You've got a cable which is a covered wire which can be shaped like that, and then you've got the piece that I suppose the hose, so that comes from the vacuum cleaner cylinder and into the handle part. And then in a separate little bag you've got a few more pieces, and in here you've got the feet and the vacuum cleaner head. You've got a little plug socket there, and these are the old type vacuum cleaners that used to actually plug into the light socket. But if you didn't have a doll's house that sort of dates to that period, then you could just sort of extend the wire over to one wall and even make a little sort of pretend plug socket in the room if you want to be using it, or you might just want it displayed somewhere under the stairs, or maybe in an attic as an old disused vacuum cleaner if you've got a newer doll's house. And then you've got two more little tiny bits in there. This piece here is the handle, and that will actually fit onto the cylinder like that. Again, they're so wonderfully detailed. This little handle, you've got two little sort of nail holes on there, or screw holes, and then this bit would be sort of like the leather bit that you would hold on to with the two metal bits at either end. So we'll paint that up to represent that. And then just another tiny little piece here, which is just something that we attach the wire into. And then you've just got a little picture in there of an old made doll actually using the vacuum cleaner. I suppose that's to show you how it looks when it's actually assembled. I've put the cable and the hose back in the little bag for safekeeping, and I'm going to begin by giving all of the metal parts a quick clean. So I've got some warm soapy water here, and that isn't washing up liquid or dish soap, that's just a mild hand soap in warm water, a toothbrush, and then just a piece of kitchen towel there to stand the pieces on. And they actually use a sort of mould release product when they're making these, and sometimes when they remove them from the mould it leaves some of the product on them, so that's why it's important to give them a good clean, otherwise you won't get a really good surface for paint. And there weren't any instructions with this, like I say, but in the other kits that I've done, it has said to look at all the pieces first, and if there's any sort of extra pieces of metal that shouldn't be there, you can just sort of snip those off with your craft knife. So I did do that first, and again there wasn't any sort of little overhanging pieces or anything that shouldn't be there. So they got quite soapy, so I'm going to just go and rinse those off with a little bit of clear water, and then I can leave them to dry. With this kit I'm going to be painting it before construction. So the next thing to do is have a think about your colour scheme. Now I've had a look on Google Images, and a lot of these old cylinder vacuum cleaners were quite dark colours, green, dark blue, like a deep red, and I'm actually going to be using a deep red colour, and I'll show you that in a moment. But the next thing to do is to have a think about which pieces you want to paint. So I want the actual cylinder to be in deep red, and then the legs I'm going to do in leaf chrome, so I'm going to polish those up to put those to one side. I want both of the end cap pieces to be in chrome, so I'll put those to one side as well. This piece then that comes out of the end cap I'll have in red, and also the little plug will be in red. I want the central part of the handle to be red, but I'll leave the little end bits in chrome. I then want my hose piece to be in red, so I'll leave the little, the actual head chrome. And then that's the little piece that comes out of the end of the wire, and I'm going to leave that in chrome as well. So basically I'm doing it so I'm alternating the colours. So I've got red with the silver attached, then I've got the red bits, and then there'll be the hose, and that'll be a red bit, and the foot bit will be silver. So I'm sort of making it so each piece coordinates nicely, so I haven't got two red pieces stuck together. Okay, so once you've sorted out how you want to do it, put your pieces that you want to polish up to one side, and I'm going to put them back into this little bag just to keep them safe. So they're safely in there. So my only exception to that, I suppose, apart from the handle, which will also be in two colours, but is the cylinder, and it's got like this little shield piece on it, which I also want to leave as silver. So I'm going to begin by polishing that piece up, because obviously that will be more difficult once I've painted the cylinder. And to do that I want to use wire wool or steel wool. So I'm just going to get rid of this tissue to one side, and then you just want to polish it up. And this sort of metal really does polish up well, so the longer you spend on it, basically the more chrome-like it will become. So I want to get this shield looking nice and bright, and I think that's going to look lovely against the dark paint. And you can see there already that that's starting to look nice and bright. So I'm just going to spend another minute or so on there, and then I'm going to do the same with the ends of this little handle. So if you can see, it's meant to be a little strap in the middle, and then these ends would be in chrome. So they're the pieces that I'm going to give a quick buff up, but only just a light buff up on those, just because they're so small. The paint that I'm going to be using is a Humbrol enamel, and it's a matte colour 73, and it's a lovely sort of brick red, almost a sort of browny red. And I've also got some other colours available in the shop suitable for this project. I've got a really lovely dark blue and a dark green, this red and another red as well. But Humbrol charts are sort of readily available online, so if you have a look and there's another colour that you like, then just let me know and I'll order that in for you. So really important to give these tins a really good shake and then a good stir as well, because you'll find that all the sort of sediment sits at the bottom there and you won't get the true colour. So spend a good sort of half a minute to a minute giving that a stir until it's nice and smooth at the bottom. If you sort of put your cocktail stick around the bottom of the tin, around the edge, you shouldn't be able to feel any sediment there. I'm going to start off with my smallest brush, so my size 0, and I'm going to start off with the little handle, and as I want the ends to be left silver, I'm going to hold on to one of those ends and start by doing the handle bit in the middle. My brush has just become a little bit frayed, so I'm just making it into more of a point on the edge of the tin. Have a spare cocktail stick handy, a clean cocktail stick, and if, as I've just done, you go over the silver, you can just use it to wipe off the paint like that. And I just want to get down the side of those handles as well. And I'm going to do underneath as well. And I'm holding it at a strange angle because I don't actually want to let go of it until I've done. That's a really lovely colour against that chrome as well. And then what I've got here is my pin box. I just wanted something plastic to stand the little parts on. So I just prop that on there, like that, and then that won't end up sticking. If you just put it down on your card, as the paint dries, it will just stick to it, so use something plastic to stand it on. So with the tiny little pieces, the little plug and the little socket to hold the hose, I've just used a piece of tacky wax just to secure them to the top of that pot, and I'm just going to paint them on there. So with the little bit that holds the hose, you don't need to go inside the little opening part there, because the hose will be in there. And the bottom will actually be secured inside one of the ends of the vacuum cleaner, so that won't be seen either. And then with the little plug, there's like a little square piece on one end, again, which will go into one of the ends of the vacuum cleaner, so that won't be seen. So that's the piece that you can put into the tacky wax. Try not to get any paint into the little hole, just because we're going to need all of that room in there for that hose, or the wire rather. That's those two pieces there. And then I just had a thought about this hose part. There's like a little grip handle at one end, and I'm actually going to leave that as chrome as well. In fact, I'll need to polish it up before I paint, and then just paint the rest of the hose. And really I just thought of that because it's something to hold on to as I'm painting. So let me just give that a quick polish and then I can paint the rest. I did that away from the desk because I didn't want to get all those little bits of wire wool everywhere, but I just wrapped a piece around the handle and then just sort of twisted it round. That's come up wonderfully in a very sort of short space of time. So I can now hold on to that part and paint the rest. Start by making a nice line underneath the handle. And there's a little bit of a ridge as well that you can follow. Just sort of let your brush follow the ridge. I'm not painting the little bit that sticks out at the end there, because again that's to fix into the sort of head, the head part. You know, I've suggested those darker colours because that would be more traditional, but of course you can use whatever colour you like. It's your vacuum cleaner and your doll's house, so if you want to do it bright pink you can. Entirely up to you. So that's that piece done, and I'm just actually going to get another couple of pieces of tacky wax just to stand that in. I'm just going to put a little bit of tacky wax on the end there, and then just sort of stand it over the edge of that tub. I just have to be careful not to sort of jog that now. And then finally the cylinder, and I think I'm going to put some tacky wax in each end as well, just to hold on to. Now, we don't need to paint these ends because obviously they're going to be completely hidden. I just thought if I put a little bit of tacky wax at each end, then my fingers aren't actually touching the barrel as I paint. Let me just clean this wax out from behind my nail. It can be quite painful when you get it behind your nail, can't it? It feels like it's sort of pushing your nail off. I want this to go into a little point again, because I want to make a start by painting around the edge of that shield on the front there. And I'm just going to be super careful. If you wanted to maybe mask that up, you could. It's actually quite a thick shield, so you can let the brush sort of go along the top of it quite nicely. There's quite a nice sort of ridge along the top there. I think it's so small you can't even see it on camera, but my sort of line of thinking was if I accidentally went over the shield, I would just paint over the whole thing and not leave it chrome. I think it will look nice in chrome. But just use your smallest brush. Take your time, there's no rush. And as you know, I'll be doing my sort of doll's house in a more contemporary design. So I think I'm going to have my vacuum cleaner in the attic. Just trying not to get too much paint into those little holes. But don't worry if you do, because we can just dig that out with a scribe or something once we come to put the little handle in. Trying to twist that round without touching it with my fingers. And then these little bits that you can see under here are where the feet go, so try not to get too much paint in those either. Again, not a major problem if you do. I actually just noticed there's sort of a bit of a ridge around the middle there, and I wish I'd have thought about that because I would have left that silver as well. But not to worry now. So it's always a good idea to spend time just having a look at things before you start. If you're anything like me, you're just always in a rush. I find time to be a real enemy of mine. I always plan too much in a day and I never get it all done. So I'm always rushing, trying to get more in. I think I've been all the way around, but I'll just check. And if once the paint has dried you've missed anything, you can just touch it in, even after the piece is constructed. But yeah, I'm pretty sure I've got everything on there, so I'm just going to carefully try and stand that on top of that tub now, and that's where the tacky wax comes in handy, because you can actually just stick it down with that and that's all sort of gone into that top sort of recess now, but don't worry because we can dig that all out once the paint has dried. So that's all of my coloured pieces now, and I'm going to leave these to dry overnight. If you wanted to do it in a day, you can. I think it takes about 6 hours to dry completely, and I've done pieces in the morning and then come back to them late afternoon. But I do actually rather prefer to leave them overnight, so you know they're completely dry and you can handle them without sort of scratching any of the paint off. So I'll come back to these in the morning. So once your paint has completely dried, and mine has been drying now overnight, you can just dig out that tacky wax with a cocktail stick or something, and that can go straight back in your pot. That can be reused. And make sure you get all of that out of there, so we don't want it jamming up the ends. And then you can just use a little bit of wet cloth just to clean that area, make sure there's no tacky wax residue there. So I'll go and do that now. Okay, so I'm now going to place all of the painted parts back into the little bag. Keep them safe. And then I'm going to go back to the parts that I want to remain silver. And then again I'm going to use the wire wool to buff these pieces up and get a really lovely shine on them. Let's start with these feet. And basically the longer you spend buffing each piece, the shinier they'll become. And you can get them to a really high shine, almost like chrome. I think making them look like chrome would look lovely if you were using like a bright red or a bright blue paint or something like that. Perhaps for a 1950s sort of retro home or something. Make it look like a hot rod vacuum cleaner. Once all of your pieces are prepared, we can now begin gluing them together, and to do that I'm going to use this Speed Epoxy, which is a two-part adhesive. So you've got a hardener there and an adhesive, and you mix them together, and that's what creates the strength. Gorilla also do a really good Speed Epoxy, and you'll find that available in my Etsy shop. So that's that. And then I've got the exploded diagram here, and I've just laid out all of the parts roughly in the order that they go. And just beware to make sure that you're putting the right end piece in the right end of the cylinder, and you can tell which is which because you've got the, shows you on the diagram there, the end with the little shield. You've got the let's call it the sort of plain end, and then the other end is the end where your little plug will go. So just make sure you've got them all in the right order. And I've had a little go at trying to fit these feet because I'm not really sure which way they stand, whether they go like that and stick out a bit or the other way round and they're just sort of straight up. But because I can't sort of hold it all together, I can't really tell. So once we've got the ends in place, I'll have a play around with that and see which way they need to be glued. We can do the handle and the head part because that attaches to the cylinder with the cord, and again the wire attaches to the little plug point once this plug is glued into place. And that actually does fit quite snugly in there, so if you think you might want to remove that, so that will have the cord on, go into the little plug that goes into the ceiling, or would have done, then you don't have to glue that in. Okay, so I've got my workshop window open, and I'm now going to mix a little bit of Speed Epoxy. Okay, so my glue is mixed and it dries pretty quickly, so I want to work quite quickly, and I'm going to begin by gluing the ends into the cylinder. And you'll see you've got like a cut out moon shape there, and then a little screw hole or raised piece for the screw hole in the top to go into. So I'm actually just applying a bit of glue into that recess, and then on the bottom of there you'll see you've got that sort of horseshoe shape, and then the little hole that raised piece goes into. So make sure you've got it the right way round, and that should just slot really nicely on there like that. Push that into place, and these are quite nice sized pieces, so it's not too fiddly at this stage. And then I'm going to move straight down and attach the piece to the bottom, and this is the same where you've got the moon shape and then the little hole cut out. Get that the right way round, and again that can be pressed down. The glue takes about 4 minutes to harden, so just press them into place and make sure you've got a solid join. I'm actually going to just stand that up over there while the glue begins to take, and I want to glue the handle into the head part before my epoxy starts drying. So again, you've got a little bit on the end there, the bit that we didn't paint, if you remember. The way that the head naturally stands is the way it goes, so you want to poke that in there like that. Pressing those together. Again, you can't sort of stand it up to dry, so I might have to find something to prop it on in that position. And what I'm also going to do while I've got a little bit of glue left is glue the handle into place. So I just want to dot a tiny bit into those little holes. Like that, and then the handle has a right and a wrong side, so the wrong side is the side you've got the little bits sticking out, which will fit into the holes there. So pop those in, and just very carefully turn that around and push those into place. And you can see the handle there is just very slightly raised. You can see that little gap under there. I just want to hold it all into place as the glue begins to take. Okay, so now the glue has completely dried, I want to attach the feet, or the legs as they're called actually in the exploded diagram. Now in the diagram you can't really tell which way around they're supposed to go in, so I've tried both ways, and they don't hold themselves in like all the other pieces do, so it's difficult to show you, but if I just sort of hold it there in my hand, the little bits that stick out then are on the inside. But let's get some glue on the go, and then I might be able to show you a bit more easily what I mean. Okay, so I'll begin by just applying a little bit of glue into each of those little holes, just on one side. So that's the top of my vacuum cleaner. The little bits that stick out are going on the inside, and they should really just slot in like that. Actually, if you sort of slot them in and then sort of jiggle it very carefully, you can sort of feel them lock in, so you'll know then that you've got it in the right place. If it's wobbly, it's not right. So just very gently jiggle it until you sort of feel it lock and click. You'll feel it that it's in the right place. So I'm just pressing that in, and these longer bits of metal will bend when you press them, so just be really careful when you're doing that. And I think I've sort of bent the middle very slightly earlier on, but I'll straighten that out once the glue has dried. Now this takes 4 minutes to actually set to where you can stop holding it, but I want to get that other foot in, or other leg in, with the glue that I've got left. So let me just see if I can very carefully do that. So I'll put another little bit of glue in each of those. Almost wipe that off my finger then. I really don't like this glue, or any sort of strong glue. Right, so the bits that stick out, I'm trying to sort of show you the shape of that end there. So underneath there's bits that stick inwards, so they should be on the inside, or otherwise you'll have one tall leg and one flat leg. And again, that doesn't feel like it's in right yet. Let me jiggle it. There, I just felt it sort of click into the right place. Okay, so I don't want to stand that on the feet to dry, so let me see if I can find something to prop that up with. Got an eraser there. I wonder if I can just lay it very carefully against the edge of that. Okay, so whilst that cylinder's drying, I just want to attach the hose into the end of the handle. So the hose is a little bit flared at the end, or frayed, so just snip the end bit off. And then what I found is if you rub the end of the handle into the epoxy and just take off the excess on your piece of card, and then use a pair of tweezers or something just to sort of round that into a point. Now, through trial and error, I found out that the hole in the end of the handle on the actual sort of hose part isn't actually wide enough to take the cord, so the cord should actually just sit over the handle. So if you apply glue along the top of the handle there, let it go into the hole, that's okay. And then you just want to really press the cord against it. So if it's going into the hole, that's fine, but really it's just going to sort of sit against the top part of that handle. Now, I don't know why they've quite designed it like that, but when I tried it earlier, once the glue begins to dry, it does feel quite firm against the top of the handle. You shouldn't really be getting this glue on your fingers, so if you've got gloves, latex or nitrile gloves, then wear those. And you just really need to push them very gently together for a little while, and that piece can then be left to dry. Very carefully put that down over there. So now take your wire, and again it's the same thing, it's become a little bit flared, so I'm actually going to cut through the wire. It's quite a thin wire, so you'll just be able to do that with your scissors. Rub that in the glue again and twist that around on your piece of card. And then you might actually have enough glue on the end of the cable, but I'm just going to put another little bit on the end there, and this is the little plug part. And press that on there. So press that together. So whilst the wire's drying, we can push the other end of the hose into that little sort of like little cup piece that we've got there, and that the cable will actually fit in, the hose will actually fit in there. So put a little bit of glue inside like that, and then push the hose inside. Again, apply glue to the end of your hose first and twist it on your card to make it as small as you can. Hold those together for a moment, and that can then be left to dry off. Okay, so these pieces are now dry, and I actually left those dry in overnight. So there's the actual vacuum cleaner part, and then the hose and everything has dried as well. Now, I did say earlier that I was going to glue that part into the end of the vacuum cleaner, but having just sort of put it in there, it's quite a nice fit anyway. And when you then come to sort of display your hose part, you may need to sort of twist this wire to get it to sit straight, or twist this cord, and you can obviously do that easier if that's movable. So I'm not actually going to glue that into place, and like I said, it's a nice tight fit, so there's no sort of worry about that falling out of there. And the same actually with this little plug that goes into the back of the cylinder part there, like that. and that's quite a nice tight fit as well, so I'm not going to glue that. So the last thing I've got to now glue is the cord with the plug on the other end into the back of the little plug socket. So again, it's quite frayed, so you want to begin by just trimming that to get a nicer end. And again, it doesn't actually go into that little hole. The cord is a little bit too thick and the wire inside the cord is too thin. So again, I'm just going to apply glue to the end and then just push it against the edge of that little plug. So let me mix some of this glue. I'll just open my window actually. Such an awful smell, which I'm sure I've mentioned before. So for this I'm just going to need a tiny little amount. Then I'm going to apply glue onto the little plug and then just press the cord to the end of the plug. I'm just going to hold that together for a moment until the glue begins to take. And there is the completed kit. And I'm really pleased with how that looks. I think that's going to be a really nice detail in my doll's house attic. Again, another really lovely kit. All of the parts are well made and really nicely detailed and true to scale. The trickiest part by far was getting the wire and the cord or the hose into place, because they're just slightly too big to fit into the holes. You're really just pressing the two pieces together, so it is a little bit tricky getting them to stick, and of course you have to sort of sit and hold it till your glue begins to take. But apart from that, extremely easy to put together and a really lovely little piece. Now the kit is available to purchase from my Etsy shop. There's a link there at the bottom of the screen, and I'll pop an actual clickable link in the description box below. And whilst you're there, please do have a browse around. I've got over 270 lines available for sale in the shop. You'll find lots of tools and accessories and other materials useful for making doll's house furniture and miniatures. I really hope you've enjoyed this kit review. If so, please do give the video a thumbs up, and if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please do, as there's lots more to come. And for now, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.